All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Daily Power Parsha, Thursday, January 20th, 2022. 1-2-0-2-0-2-2, I think, is the date. I think I got that right. Okay, so it's great to see you all. And it's great to have a chance to study Torah again with you on this beautiful day. Okay, Parsha this week is Yitro. And the main theme is the giving of the Torah at Sinai. So yesterday we read about the preparations for the Torah giving on Sinai. We read about the dialogues that were going on, the non-negotiations, whatever, God's communication with Moses to the people back to Moses back to God, and all that stuff. We also read about how for 3 days, the Jewish people were meant to be preparing themselves, cleansing themselves, purifying themselves for the experience. How when the day arrived, there was thunder and lightning and all of this spectacle. And now the reading that we're going to do today, reading number 6, actually has the 10 Commandments, aka the Decalogue. I think we read that somewhere, the Decalogue, which I kind of like that phrase. Okay, it seems like Miami. I hear Decalogue, I'm like, oh yeah, Miami. That's how the design is. I know that's Art Deco. I know. I'm just saying, like, Decalogue is kind of okay. Let's jump in. All right, 6th reading. Exodus chapter 19, verse 20. So the Lord descended upon Mount Sinai to the peak of the mountain, and the Lord summoned Moses to the peak of the mountain, and Moses ascended. This verse is well discussed in Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy, how at this moment of divine revelation, God descends, right? So the Lord descended, God goes down, so to speak, and Moses ascended. Moses goes up. This is how heaven and earth come together. It's by the divine coming down, and by the earthly, the mundane, going up. These are the two modalities of our service of God. On the one hand, we elevate ourselves up to God. We climb the mountain, so to speak. At the same time, we bring God down to us. What are these two approaches? So I'll explain. Kabbalah and Chassidus explains that prayer is an experience of climbing the mountain. Remember, we talk about the ladder of prayer, right? We've talked about that before, climbing the ladder, different rungs, 4 parts of prayer. So prayer is avodah, is all about climbing, striving, elevating, ascending. So prayer is like a fire, which is ascending. It's called in Kabbalah and Chassidus, it's melmata l'mayla, from below to above. And when we do a mitzvah, performing a mitzvah is melmayla lamata, from above to below, because every mitzvah is a divine command that we are integrating in our lives. It's basically coming from Hashem. It's God's command that we are integrating. So God says, this is good food for you. This is holy food. And then we eat it. So we're taking kind of divine energy, bring it into ourselves. We're taking a divine value and inculcating into our lives and integrating into our persona. So that's taking heaven and bringing it down to earth. So there's elevating ourselves, and then there's bringing the divine below. Both of these directions happen. God descends, Moses ascends, and that is where heaven and earth meet. Let's continue. The Lord said to Moses, go down. Just when Moses climbs up the mountain, time to go down. Go down and warn the people, lest they break their formation to go near to the Lord to see, and many of them will fall. In other words, go down once again, warn the people not to get too close to the mountain, not to try to climb the mountain. Don't break their formation. They were encamped around the mountain. You ever see stampedes? People are rushing toward, the stage or whatever it is. This is like, don't warn the people. Be very careful. Don't get too close. Don't try to get a better view. Don't get too close to try to see. Because if that happens, then many of them will fall. It's not going to be good. Fall meaning perish. Let's continue. And also God says to Moses, the priests who go near to the Lord shall prepare themselves, lest the Lord wreak destruction upon them. If anyone is getting a little bit closer than others, they have to know they have to be ready and prepared. Okay, so let's take a quick look at Rashi. Warn them. What's the warning? Not to go up the mountain, lest they break their position, their ranks, because of their longing for God to see him, and they move too close to the side of the mountain. The danger here is people wanting to get a better view. They want to get closer. They want to see. They want to experience. They want to touch. That's going to be a problem. Many of them will fall. Even a single person, to me, it is considered as if many have fallen. Even if one person gets too close, still problematic. The priests, Rashi explains, priests, what kind of priests are we talking about here? Not Kohanim. I don't believe that distinction had yet been made. This is referring to the firstborn, who at that point were going to perform the divine service. Remember, this is before the sin of the golden calf, when the firstborn officially lost their privileges, and it went to the Kohanim, to the tribe of Levi, who didn't participate in the golden calf service. So when he talks about the priests here, before Sinai, before the sin of the golden calf, Rashi says it means the firstborn also shouldn't get too close, even though they're going to go near to the Lord. I mean, theoretically, if it wasn't taken away from them to offer up sacrifices, they too shall not rely on their importance to ascend the mountain. Just because they're offering sacrifices doesn't mean they can get too close. And they shall prepare themselves, be ready to stand on their position, lest the Lord wreak destruction and expression of a breach. He will kill some of them and thus make a breach in them, their completeness, if they get too close. Okay, so that is that. That's the first part of first few verses. So now that's what God says to Moses. So Moses said to the Lord, Moses' response was, the people cannot ascend to Mount Sinai. What's the fear? They're going to get too close. They're going to touch the mountain. They can't. Why not? For you warned us, saying, set boundaries for the mountain to sanctify it. In other words, we already put boundaries. We already put the fencing around the mountain, so they can't get there. So what's the concern? But the Lord said to him, God's like, what, you're telling me how people think. You're telling me what mob behavior looks like. You're telling me what the crowd crush is. Come on. There was a tragedy recently at a concert in Houston. Right? You may be familiar with this. Tragedy at Travis Scott, I think is his name. There was a very, very tragic incident. Multiple people died at a concert. One of these crowd crushes, and people suffocated. They couldn't breathe, whatever it was, and literally died. So this is not talking about the crush. This is talking about ascending the mountain. I understand it's different, but there's a psychology when you have a lot of people in a place. Things can happen and get out of control very quickly. You should know, let me just parenthetically tell you this, at Fabrengens, and I was at a few Fabrengens. I didn't live in Crown Heights, and I wasn't in Brooklyn growing up. I was in Pittsburgh, and so on occasion, we went into Fabrengens. There were a lot of people packed in a room, and I personally was never there for like Yom Kippur or Simchat Torah, but the stories that I've heard from people that were there, the crowds were crazy. I mean, we're talking about like crowds, and if somebody moved, there was a wave through the crowd. It's like, there was movement. The crowd is a living organism. It's not like a static. It's not just a bunch of people standing shoulder to shoulder. It's a moving thing, which means that at any point it can breach, some sort
What happened in Israel, Rabbi, last year.
Yeah, in Meron, exactly. Yeah, the tragedy on Lag BaOmer in Meron by the Rashbi, exactly. Which when it happened, I heard what happened, but I never really followed up and looked into it. I mean, just the tragedy is a tragedy. I don't remember. I remember the reports that there was a crush or stampede, but I don't think at the end there was a stampede. I think people got, I don't remember. I don't want to misspeak, but it was like there was a narrow space and it was slippery, and I think people fell.
I think that the structure collapsed under the weight of the people.
Or the structure, that might have been another thing that maybe that's where that happened. I don't know. I don't have clarity. My memory is not clear, and I don't remember if all the reports that come out by the time that I was, when I was following that story, so to speak. I don't hate calling it a story, but anyway, the point is that Moses like, what? We put up boundaries, so no one's going to go up the mountain. And God's like, okay, just please do me a favor, go back, just remind them of how important it is that they stay back behind the barriers. All right, let's get back inside the text. But the Lord said to him, go descend. Listen, Moses, I know what I'm talking about. And then you shall ascend. Okay, so basically saying, go anyway, even though you don't think it's necessary, go anyway, warn the people again, remind them not to get too close, and then you shall ascend, then come back up. You would hope that there was like, on ski slopes, they have the lifts. You would hope there's Moses with like a walking stick, just climbing up the mountain. Oh, hey, Moses, you're here. Do me a favor, go back down. It's like, I just got here. Took me a day, mountain climbing. Anyway, it's all joking aside. I'm not sure how big Mount Sinai was, but it was from a mountain perspective, it was one of the smaller mountains. In fact, according to our tradition, it's a good insight on its own, not even in a specific context, but Mount Sinai was the smallest of the local mountains in that area. It was chosen specifically because it was the smallest. There's a medrash that has been captured in a beautiful kid song. What's the song, Shalom, about the mountain? But little Har Sinai did it. How does it start off? You don't know? I don't know if she made that song. Well, how does the mountain song start? Okay, so there's this. You want to sing it for the crowd? No, okay. Basically, there's a song about mountains, how the mountains were vying to have the Torah given on them. So one mountain says, I'm the tallest. God, I'm the tallest. The Torah should be given on me because I'm the tallest mountain. The other one says, I'm the widest mountain. So it should be given on me. But then little Har Sinai, there she was, just kind of standing by the side. I'm not the biggest, I'm not the tallest, I'm not the widest, I'm not the broadest. I'm just little mountain. No, but how does it? Little Har Sinai did it? I'm not going to look at YouTube now. All right. Anyway, bottom line is that little Har Sinai thought that she had he or she, I don't know, there's no gender with mountains, but that it had no chance. And Hashem said, no, you're the one, you're the mountain that I want the Torah to be given on because you're the humble mountain. I don't want any mountains bragging, oh, look at me, I'm the biggest mountain. That's not where Torah is. Torah is found in a small place. The Rebbe asked the question, if that's the case, then why wasn't it given in a valley? Why in a mountain? In other words, if the whole point of Torah is if the whole value, the lesson here is how you have to be humble when you study Torah, and Torah should lead to humility and not to arrogance. If it's all about humility and being humble, so then why was there any mountain chosen? So the Rebbe explains, because you still need to be a mountain. Mountain means you're tough, you're strong. You still have to have confidence. You got to be a mountain. You can't be a shmata. You know what a shmata is? You can't be like a doormat. You can't be, you can't let yourself get stepped on. You have to have strength. You have to be a mensch. You have to be confident. Because otherwise, how are you going to get anything done in this world? You're just going to be like, I don't know. You tell me. I'm sorry. Can't be too apologetic going through life. You got to be confident. At the same time, even as you're a mountain, be a small mountain. In other words, be a mountain, but don't be an arrogant mountain. So that's the hybrid. I just say this because I was talking about Moses' ski lift up the mountain. Look, sure, he didn't have a ski lift and he had to climb, but the good news is it wasn't the biggest mountain around. So it took him a little less time perhaps than some of the other mountains. So God says to him, go back down, and then you're going to come back up. Okay, and then you shall ascend, and Aaron with you. But the priest and the populace shall not break the formation to ascend the Lord. So Aaron also goes up the mountain a little bit, not all the way. He goes up a little bit, but the priest and the populace shall not break the formation to ascend to the Lord, lest he wreak destruction upon them. So Moses went down to the people and said this to them. And then, of course, he went back up. Let's take a look at Rashi. We did a few more verses. So let's see Rashi. All right, the people cannot. Moses says, what's the point? They already know that they can't. I do not have to warn them, says Moses, because today they have already been warned for 3 days. Because they were warned for 3 days. I feel like that English doesn't make much sense. Whatever, there's no reason to warn them today because they've already been warned a few days ago, and they cannot ascend the mountain since they have no permission. I think there were also some boundaries put up, as God had said. But the Lord says, go anyway. Go, descend, and warn them a second time. Look at that. Look at that. You got to give multiple warnings, says God. We admonish a person. Admonish is not admonish. Well, admonish to me means you scolding and telling a person off. In this case, it's not admonish as much as it is shemezarzin. Zarz means it's not admonish. You warn a person before the act he is to perform. You admonish him again at the time of the act when it is to be performed. In other words, give somebody a heads up in advance, and then at the time you remind them again. It's like you have a meeting. So, set a reminder a day before and, time up. You got multiple touches here. Yeah. So you need a second reminder. That's what God is telling Moses. Give them another reminder. It's about to happen. Remind them not to go up the mountain. Okay. What about Aaron and the priests? Here we go. I might think that they too shall be with you. Therefore, the Torah says, and you shall ascend. Consequently, I'm skipping the brackets here. Consequently, you must say that you, Moses, shall have a partition for yourself. In other words, you're going to have a perch on the mountain. Aaron shall have a partition for himself. Aaron's going to have another perch. And the priests shall have a partition for themselves, and they'll have a third perch. So up on the mountain, there were three boxes. I don't know, boxes. Three areas. I recently saw a documentary on mountain climbing. Look at that. How appropriate. It was this guy who climbed, I want to say, like 14 mountains in a few months. Like of the tallest mountain, like 8,000 feet mountain. Some crazy record that he broke. Like took the last guy like a year and a half to do, and this guy did it in like 3 months. Like just crazy amount of climbing. Anyway, they have like base camp. I've never done so here's the deal. Full disclosure, I've never done mountain climbing. I'm sure you can, I'm sure that's a shocker. Never done mountain climbing before. But apparently they have like base camp. There's base camp 1 or 2 or A or B, whatever the naming sequence is. And you gather there, like the lowest base camp, that's where everyone gathers. Then when you climb up, there's another, camp where everyone gathers, something like that. So there were different camps. Moses was toward the top or at the top. Aaron was lower, and the priests were even lower. They were all kind of on the mountain to one extent or another. The rest of the people were outside. Joy, did you want to jump in? Oh, no. Sorry. I thought, okay. Okay. Anyone ever done mountain climbing? Just out of curiosity? Mountain climbing? No? Anyone hang out with Sherpas? I think that's what the guys are called, Sherpa. All right, Sherpa. I think I had a coat that once had Sherpa.
I've
Sarah.
done some mountain climbing, Rabbi.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I heard a great story about base camp too, about these. Can I tell it real quick? I'll be super fast.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we got time.
Okay. Yeah. So these two, mountaineers were out there like in their 20s. And one guy falls through they're ice climbing. And he falls through this ice cavern, and his buddy decides to cut him off. Anyways, it was controversial for him letting him go, but so the guy breaks his leg and he's climbing out with these ice picks because he didn't want to die alone on the mountain. And so he just crawls back, he sets points for himself, and he's like in pain and hallucinating and stuff, no food, no water. It was just a crazy story about the human spirit. Just so he could get back to the base camp. He was like, if I die when I get back to base camp, it would have been fine as long as I wasn't alone.
Wow, that's wild. That's crazy. I mean, it's
really
such an extreme. Yeah,
it was a good story.
That's a wild story. Yeah, I remember there was. I mean, that reminded me of this. Remember the story a few years ago? The guy who was climbing, and then his arm got stuck, and he had to all right, whatever. We don't need to. Yeah. I'm sorry, but it's an intense thing you're dealing with, especially with the ice. You're dealing with avalanches, and it's not just indoor rock climbing that I've done, right? But that's not that. This is the real deal. Anyway, back to Mount Sinai climbing. So Rashi says like this. Rashi says, consequently, So Moses went closer than Aaron, and Aaron closer than the priests. But the people shall altogether not break their position to ascend to the Lord. So again, we have now 4 positions, and it should be crystal clear. 4 positions. The people, the general populace, are to be positioned around the mountain, but not too close, not on the mountain for sure. The priests, a little bit on the mountain, maybe at the bottom of the slope. I don't know exactly where. Aaron a little bit higher, Moses at the top. That's the way this was to be divided. The rest is grammatical stuff in Rashi over here. Okay, let's continue. So Moses went down to the people, said this to them. Rashi says the warning. He gave them the warning about not climbing the mountain. Let's toggle Rashi off. And I think we're ready. Buckle up. 10 Commandments begin now. Exodus chapter 20, verse number 1. By the way, I will mention the Shabbos, of course, we read this in the Torah. It's an appropriate time, Shabbat, to come to Shul, if you can make it, and hear the 10 Commandments, read from the original. Kind of a cool experience. All right, Exodus chapter 20, here we go. God spoke all these words. I don't know. To respond. I'm not crazy about that translation. Let me explain why that's what this means, to respond. This is an attempt to translate the Hebrew word lamar. Lamar is a problematic word. Why is lamar a problematic word? Lamar means, literally lamar, this Hebrew word, lamar means to say. Every time the Torah, pretty much every time God tells something to Moses, it says, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lamar. God said to Moses, lamar, to say. What does that mean? The way we understand it is simple, that God told this to Moses to repeat, to say, lamar, to say over, to deliver to the Jewish people. So it wasn't a personal conversation. It's not like God told this to Moses, because if God told it to Moses, then how do we know about it? It was told to Moses. God told it to Moses, lamar, to tell us, which is why we know about it, which is why it's in the Torah, etc. You can imagine there were many more conversations that God might have had with Moses that aren't public knowledge, that weren't for us to know. The ones that we know, the ones in Torah, the ones where God said, lamar, I want you to say this over. So lamar, so let me just hone in on this idea. The word lamar in Hebrew, lamar, means when you tell person A something, to repeat to person B. The problem here is there's no person B. God wasn't telling the 10 Commandments to Moses to repeat to us. God was saying the 10 Commandments to all of us. So what's the lamar? It says, let me just bring up the screen again so you see what I'm talking about. It says that God spoke all these words, lamar, to say. I know it says to respond, but they're just trying to figure out what to do with this Hebrew word. Lamar typically means to say to someone else. Who's the someone else? Everyone was there. If God is just speaking to Moses, it's a one-on-one conversation, and there's 2 million people that need to know. So God says, I want you to take this, to listen, and then repeat this. But who are we repeating? Who are we repeating this to? So now you're going to say, I know who. This is going to be subsequent generations. This is God speaking to the children of Israel then, lamar, to repeat it to future generations, right? Because everyone was there then, but this is lamar to repeat it, to tell it over to the children and the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren for all time. Doesn't work. That doesn't work. Why? Because we have a tradition that all the souls were present for all generations, were present at Mount Sinai. So that you had people in souls and bodies, but otherwise you had souls. All Jews of all generations for all time were there. So then who are we repeating this to? What's the lamar? God spoke these words. God said these commandments, lamar, to say to who? Everyone's there. So there's a few answers that are given. I hope the question makes sense. A few answers that are given are, number one, it's referring to the world at large, right? Judaism skips to the world. Although these are 10 commandments of the Torah, of the Jewish Bible, nonetheless, they have a universal impact. So lamar means to share with the world. That's one explanation. Lamar can also mean to tell it to ourselves. I'll tell you, it's one thing to hear from God, but it's another to remember it on a daily basis, right? Once upon a time, we heard this from God. Lamar means constantly repeating it, reiterating it, re-explaining it to ourselves so that we actually live by these ethos, by these values, and they don't remain stagnant historical artifacts, dead historical artifacts from a different time and a different era, from a different genre of existence. No, they are timeless, they are timely, they are perpetual. These are commandments that we live by. Lamar, it's a living, breathing body of law. So that's just some insights into the word lamar, which here is translated as to respond, but again, doesn't really make much sense, at least to me in the English, what that means. Let's continue. Verse number 2. This thus begins the 10 commandments. That's the quick preamble. This is what God said, and now we get into the 10 commandments. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. So the first commandment seems like an introduction, but it's not so much. It's like, oh, nice to meet you. I'm God who took you out of the land of Egypt. It's not just an introduction. It's reminding us about the fact that there's only one God. This is the core, the basis, or the articulation of monotheism. Of course, the monotheistic drive was accelerated by Abraham. He taught it to the world in his time, to the people in his time. But here we have God kind of formalizing this idea and this commitment by saying, I am the one, I am your God. I am the Lord your God. And who am I? Who took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. The question is asked in Kabbalah and Chassidus, why does God introduce himself? Why does he choose from his resume the fact that he took us out of Egypt? Why didn't he say, I am the Lord your God who created heaven and earth? You would think that creation is a bit of a bigger deal than redemption, than Exodus. So why mention the Exodus here and not creation? Many answers are given. I'll share with you just a few. Number one, because the Exodus was fresh in their minds. You tell me, oh, that you're God and you created all this. Okay. All right. Maybe not. But what have you done for me lately? You created all of this. All right. Good. Fine. You're a dinosaur. I mean, what do you want me to know? I don't mean literally, but I mean, like that's once upon a time you created heaven and earth. What have you done for me lately? So God says, here's who I am. I took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Second answer that I'll give you is what we said a few weeks ago. The difference between month number 7 and month number 1. Difference between Tishrei and Nisan, or 2 number 1 months, 2 first months. Creation and redemption. If God would have said, you know who I am? I'm the one who created heaven and earth. All right, so you created the box. God says, I'm the one who took you out of the box. Now we're talking. God is now introducing himself, not as the God of nature, but the God of the supernatural. Not the God of the matrix, but the God of undoing the matrix. It's a bit of a different vantage point of who and what God is. All right, let's continue with verse number 3 in the second commandment. You shall have, yes.
There's a really good Rashi on this, if you want to take a look at it.
Let's see. I imagine we have a lot of big Rashis over here. Taking you out of Egypt is a sufficient reason for you to be subservient to me. Okay. In other words, I took you out of that slavery. So now you got to listen to me. Okay. I mean, it could be misconstrued, but it's kind of what it sounds like from Rashi. Alternatively, God mentioned the Exodus since he revealed himself on the seas as a valiant warrior, and here he revealed himself as an old man full of mercy. Okay. Since I changed my appearances, do not say that there are 2 divine domains, but I am he who took you out of Egypt, and I am he who performed miracles by the sea. The same God.
Yeah, Rashi concludes, says, do not err and say that there are many divine powers.
Right. Yep. Right. They heard many voices during Revelation from all four directions. So the point is not to make a mistake and think that there are multiple deities. Good. Okay. All right. Let's go on to the next verse, verse number 3. And God says, "You shall not have the gods of others in my presence." That's the prohibition against foreign deities, foreign gods, foreign entities, foreign, what we call in Yiddish, getchkas, foreign idols, substances. You shall not make for yourself, along these lines, you shall not make for yourself a graven image or any likeness which is in the heavens above, which is on the earth below, or which is in the water beneath the earth. So no graven images, we'll define that in a moment. No graven image of anything, of any heavenly being, earthly being, or even water being. So no, it seems like we're saying no sculptures of a star, a human, or a shark. Right? These all would be problematic. But of course, the caveat here is graven image. Graven image means an image that is utilized or created for the purpose of utilizing for idolatry and idol worship. If you're creating an image of the sun to worship or to deify, that's when it becomes a problem. When you're creating an image of a human being to worship and deify, that's a problem. When you create an image of a sea creature to worship or deify, that's a problem. And if you're wondering, who makes images of sea or land or heavenly creatures to deify? It's all over the place. Absolutely all over the place. Just even in modern times, but look at ancient times. I mean, pagan symbols. Think about like Greek mythology. The gods of this and the gods of that, and this one had a fish tail, and this one had a person, a Zeus, a this, that, the other. We're talking about deification of entities, heavenly bodies, human bodies, terrestrial creatures, sea creatures. All of these things throughout our history have been deified. And here, unequivocally, in the Ten Commandments, God absolutely forbids this from Jewish practice. This is absolutely off limits. Let's continue. You shall neither prostrate yourself before them nor worship them, which there's a nuance here. So I'm going to start with the last one first. Don't worship them. But even if you're not worshiping them, you're just bowing down, that's also a problem. Any bowing, don't bow down, even if your intention is not to worship, bowing down itself is problematic. And God continues, "For I, the Lord, your God, am a zealous God, who visits the iniquity of the fathers upon the sons, upon the third and fourth generation of those who hate me." So there is some residual negativity. Now, is this God, punishing children or grandchildren for the parents or grandparents' sin? Not exactly the way we understand this in the commentaries. It's more of like, someone who engages in this type of behavior, it's going to have an effect, probably on a few generations, a perspective of, what's reality, what's not reality. It's hard to undo that type of education. When you're in service of, when you're serving and worshiping, physical entities, created entities, it's hard to undo that. It's going to take a few generations to undo that, possibly. God says, but conversely, I perform loving kindness to thousands of generations, to those who love me and to those who keep my commandments. When we teach our children, when we practice love and kindness and positivity, that goes on for thousands of generations, and that's a blessing to thousands of generations. Here we have the famous teaching of our sages that goodness is far more powerful than the opposite, because goodness extends to thousands of generations. The opposite, negativity, only goes 3 or 4 generations. How many times more is goodness better than the opposite? So we have goodness and kindness extending for thousands of generations, and negativity 3 or 4. Yeah. The Rebbe would always talk about this. If you see something happening in the world that's negative, and it's made a tremendous impact, can you imagine how much positivity could also be created through an action as well? Rebbe spoke about like the atomic bomb, nuclear bomb, right? Like one button, I don't know if it's a button, but like one press can destroy so many lives. Can you imagine, the Rebbe says, the power of one mitzvah, one little mitzvah, one seemingly little mitzvah, you press a little button, do a little mitzvah. Imagine the force of goodness that it unleashes. Right? Because goodness is always more powerful than negativity. That's the lesson that we have here with the 3 and 4 generations and the thousands of generations. Okay, so far we have 2 of the commandments. I am the Lord your God, and so basically the belief in one God, and the prohibition against idolatry, creating idols, worshiping them, etc., all in one genre. Let's continue. Commandment number 3. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. No swearing falsely in God's name. No, basically swearing falsely in God's name. For the Lord will not hold blameless anyone who takes his name in vain. So it's not only for like a false, swearing by God's name falsely, but it's any unnecessary mention of God's name. This is why we're very careful not to utter Hashem's name casually, and recreationally. In fact, the very name that we call Hashem is a euphemism. Hashem means the name. It's not actually God. Hashem doesn't mean God. It means the name. The name is a euphemism for God. But we don't use God's name. We don't take God's name in vain. We only say when praying, when reading the Torah, we don't say it actually just casually, because it would be considered to be taking it in vain casually. So that's commandment number 3. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day to sanctify it. Shabbat. What are the details? Here we go. 6 days may you work and perform all your labor. So 6 days a week, you got to create. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall perform no labor. Neither you, your son, your daughter, your manservant, your maidservant, your beast, nor your stranger who is in your cities. Should be a day of rest, and no one should be doing anything creative. Now, let me explain. The definition of work doesn't mean, let me finish this off. 1 second. Why this whole thing about Shabbat anyway? So God explains, for in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and he rested on the 7th day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and sanctified it. So God created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th. So too we are to create and work and do and accomplish and move and shake for 6 days, but the 7th day, day of rest. Now, to clarify something that we've talked about many times in many different contexts, the work that is prohibited on Shabbat is not necessarily manual labor or all manual labor. It's specific actions. So you can pick up a heavy piece of furniture in your house and move it from one side of the house to the other. You can move it from your upstairs bedroom to your downstairs guest room. You can move a bed, a mattress, a dresser. It's not a problem. I'm not saying you should on Shabbat, but you could. It's not a problem. So when we talk about work or labor being prohibited, it's not schlepping is not prohibited necessarily. It's specific types of work. Typically, it's understood as creative types of work. When I say creative, something in which something new is created. Sewing, knitting, writing, plowing, planting, winnowing. I don't know what winnowing is, but winnowing is one of them. Sifting, tying, these types of things. Dyeing, dyeing something with a color. These are all actions that are prohibited. It's not just labor. You're allowed to do things, but it's creative types of labor, and specifically, as we'll learn in the following weeks, specifically associated with the labors, with the works that were done when the Jewish people were building the Mishkan, building the tabernacle. There's a close association with Shabbat and the building of the tabernacle, as we'll see, not this week, but in the upcoming weeks, where God says, build the Mishkan, build a tabernacle, but don't build it on Shabbat, which implies that if we focus on what they were doing when building the Mishkan and building the tabernacle, we can deduce what general categories of work are prohibited on Shabbat. It's not exclusive. That's just like a juxtaposition that can be derived. But the bottom line is that it's creative types of work that are problematic. Lighting fire, cooking, you're changing something, you're creating something, changing something. On Shabbat, we're meant, if we want to go a little bit deeper, on Shabbat, we're meant to behold the world as it is, to embrace the world as it is, to realize the beauty in the world as it is, as opposed to trying to force change. 6 days a week, we do that. 6 days a week, change it. 6 days a week, hack the code. The 7th, enjoy God's creation as is. Or more precisely, look for the inner beauty as opposed to trying to manufacture something new. In other words, the 6 days a week are a masculine energy, and Shabbat is more the feminine energy. And again, I think I said this yesterday or the day before. When I say masculine and feminine, or feminine and masculine, I don't mean necessarily men and women, because every human being has elements of masculinity and femininity. So it's for both. But Kabbalah defines things as in the masculine genre and the feminine genre. The masculine genre, as defined in Kabbalah, is trying to impose change, trying to change something, create something, make something different, make something new. It's basically saying this is wrong, this is broken, let me fix it. That's one approach. Another approach is to say, it may look like it's broken, but I think the solution and the beauty lies within. It's the difference between trying to, it's kind of like that top-down model versus the bottom-up model. The top-down model is, let's impose something new. Let's impose change. Let's fix it. It's broken. That's the masculine model. The feminine model is more bottom-up, which means you say it's broken. I see potential here. I see potential. I see beauty. I see beauty. It's kind of like, again, it's not necessarily moms and dads, but it could be sometimes. You know, the child is climbing on the monkey bars, right? In the playground and falls and hurts their knee. So the dad's like, it's no big deal. You're fine. And the mom's like, tell me what's hurting. It's not, again, it's not necessarily gender. It's not, could be the father says this, the mother says that. It could be different. I'm not necessarily, it's a gender thing, but there are different approaches. One approach is you're fine, it's good, whatever. It's like just top down. I'll tell you that it's fine, right? I'm going to impose my sense of it's fine on you. You're not fine, you're crying, but I'll tell you that it's fine. That's the masculine approach. I'm going to change you. You think you're not fine. I'm telling you you're fine, and I'm going to say it louder than your cry. So it's fine. I'm not saying shouting, but I'm just saying I'll tell it to you until I convince you that you're fine. The other way is empathy, right? Getting to know how the person's feeling and healing it from inside out, healing it through closeness as opposed to from something imposed from a distance. Listen, I don't mean to go on a whole rant over, not a rant, and a whole, exposition on this. It's a really well-developed topic in Kabbalah and Chassidus. We've talked about this in various contexts. We once did a Kabbalah and Coffee Sunday morning series all about this. It was called Feminine Faith, all about the feminine energy, masculine energy, and the distinction. But here's the short version to wrap this piece up. This is the difference between the 6 days of the week and Shabbat. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is more aligned with masculine energy. That's broken. That's messed up. Let me fix it. Let me impose my will and my brain, my genius and my creativity and fix something. Sure, 6 days a week, we get to be fixers. And on the 7th, we get to know God's world. On the 7th, we get to know the beauty that's already there. Not the great ideas that we have, but the beauty that's already there in creation. It's a beautiful exercise for everyone to let go and to just be present. That's what Shabbat is. It's probably not a surprise that in our tradition, the definition, one of the descriptions of the Messianic era, Mashiach, is Yom Shekulo Shabbat. When Mashiach comes, it's going to always be Shabbat. What does that mean? Cholent every day on the menu? Kugel for days? Ay, how much can I eat already? That's not what it means. Yom Shekulo Shabbat, a day that's a time that's all Shabbat, means that we'll realize when Mashiach comes how beautiful the world is, and we won't feel the need, because it will be obviously beautiful. We won't have the need to change anything. It'll just be good as it is. Okay, it's a little bit about that. Getting back inside. So that's the fourth commandment. It's about Shabbat. Number 5, honor your father and your mother, in order that your days be lengthened on the land that the Lord your God is giving you. This is the only one of the 10 commandments that comes with the promise of a reward. It says, honor your parents, and then your days will be lengthened. It says, in order that your days be lengthened. It's almost like, do this, you'll get that. And you can even have in mind that you're doing this to get that. You want to live long? I feel like this is a book, right? Secrets to Longevity. It's 1 page, a 1-page book. It's a very short book. Honor your father and your mother. Honor your parents. Be a mensch. Of course, honor your father and mother is not easy. And it's not just when you're young and they tell you to clean up your room. Honor your father and your mother means as they get older. It's not easy. As they get older and they have needs, now it's about honoring them and taking care of them as they took care of you when you were young. That's the understanding of this commandment. Honor your parents is not just invite them for Thanksgiving, although it's also that, but what it also means is when they have a need. And the Talmud gets into great detail on this. The Talmud says, if they need help eating, dressing, getting dressed, bathing, going from place to place. Just think about how a parent takes care of a child. All of the above. Literally, all the above. Feeding, cleaning, dressing, transporting. Parents do that for children, little children. You got to do that. How's the baby gonna? There's no other plan. It's like one of the realizations that you hold a little baby in your arms is like, okay, I got a responsibility. This is it. I mean, it is what it is. So the challenge is that as human beings, we always think about forward to the next generation. Torah reminds us to also look back, because at some point in time, when everyone gets a little bit older, our parents are going to need that same help from us. And yeah, so whether directly or through, obviously, if we can't, then we need to have someone else do that, but we facilitate it, whatever it is. The point is, honoring parents is a tremendous mitzvah. And the Torah says it comes with a tremendous reward. It's not easy, but it comes with a tremendous reward. There's another understanding of this I've shared before. Honor your parents, not in order that, but because you should know that your days will be lengthened. In other words, honor your parents when they get older, because newsflash, you're going to get older one day. And if you want your kids to take care of you, you should probably model that for them by taking care of your parents. You with me? When your kids see how you took care of your parents when they got older, then they're going to grow up with that knowledge of, when our parents get older, we're going to take care of them. So it's good modeling. It's good for you also. Let's continue. Commandment number 6, and you should know 6 through 10 is really quick. Just boom, boom, boom. You shall not murder is number 6. You shall not commit adultery, number 7. You shall not steal, number 8. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor is number 9. And number 10 is this: you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, his donkey, or whatever belongs to your neighbor. No coveting. That's the final mitzvah, the final commandment of the 10 commandments. All right, so let's quickly recap. And listen, we're at the time, so we're going to close it out here. There is almost unlimited amount of themes we could talk about. We could go deep in every one of these commandments. We can show how each of these commandments is a general commandment that includes within all of the other 613 all of the 613 mitzvot in the Torah can be found somewhere in these 10 commandments. All the mitzvot can be found in the first 2 commandments. I am the Lord your God, don't have any other gods. Those 2 commandments, the positive for monotheism and the negative against polytheism, those basically contain all of them. And so we could talk about that. We could talk about the connections between 1 and 6, commandment 1 and 6, and 2 and 7, and 3 and 8, and 4 and 9, and 5 and 10, which we've done in the past in other contexts. There's a lot that we could talk about. And maybe tomorrow we'll mention some of that. But here's what I want to leave you with. The 10 commandments are divided into 2 general categories. Some of them pertain to our relationship with God. I am the Lord your God. Don't have any other gods. Don't take my name in vain. Keep the Sabbath holy. Some of them pertain to other people. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not commit adultery. Do not bear false witness against someone else. Do not covet someone else's stuff. So there's 2 categories. Bein Adam lamakom, between us and God, and Bein Adam lachavero, between us and others. And here the Torah reminds us that both avenues are critically important when it comes to being a good person. You got to take care of your spiritual connection. You also have to take care of your interpersonal relationships. Can't be one or the other. You can't be devout and devoted and not be a mensch to other people. You can't profess love of God when you're presiding over harm to other people. Are you with me on what I'm saying? Yes? I saw a headline today of a scandal that broke. I don't need to get into details, right? It's not about any individual. It's about you can't be a godly person and not care about people. You can't. It's incompatible. Nor can you, from a Torah perspective, nor can you care about people and what's the word I'm looking for? And neglect God. Either way, it's missing. Either way, there's something missing in the equation. There are 5 commandments or so that are about God. The 5th one is a little bit tricky because it's about honoring parents, which is interpersonal, but parents also are one generation closer to the source. They teach us about God, so it's also about honoring God. It's a little bit of a bridge, but approximately half the commandments are about us and God, and half are about us and others, which reminds us that we need both in our repertoire. To be a good person, we have to have a relationship with our source, with our creator, and we have to maintain a healthy relationship with others. Can't be a religious person. You can't be a spiritual person and rip off someone else. You can't be a holy person and not care about abuse that's happened. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Nor is it healthy, or is it, from a Jewish perspective, sufficient to just care about, humanity and social causes and social justice, but to neglect the other stuff, the Jewish stuff, the ritual stuff. So yes, we have to give tzedakah and put on tefillin. We have to invite guests over for Shabbat, again, safely, whatever, and light the Shabbat candles. We need both. We need the interpersonal, the social, as well as the spiritual. Just a thought for today. All right, thank you for joining me. Make sense? Yes?
Can I add one thing, Rashi? Can I add one thing?
Yes, but don't. I don't mind being called Rashi.
No, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's very, very short, but it actually applies to all the commandments. And Rashi, says, God says He will remember the sins. This actually is talking about graven images, but it's more generalized too. He remember the sins of people upon God, those who hate God, for 4 generations. In other words, that's if the generations keep doing the bad behavior of the fathers. But who does kindness for thousands of generations for those who love me. And so the point is made that it's 400 to 500 if thousands is considered to be 2,000.
Right.
That God is shows kindness to those who perform his commandments and love him 500 times more than he remembers. He hates those who go against him.
Right. So and let's end with that, because it's a beautiful idea. How much more powerful is the force of goodness than the force of negativity? So if negativity can make such a splash, if terrorism, etc., can make such a splash, how much more so goodness? Now the problem is the media doesn't cover it as much, right? As that the media covers, and as well it should, right? The tragedies and the negativity that happens, but there's a massive neglect. I've never seen, CNN and whatever carry, synagogue in Atlanta doing mitzvahs. I haven't seen it. I missed that headline. Intown Jewish Academy, right? DPP going 300 classes strong, or whatever number we're at. I haven't seen the headline. I haven't seen it yet. Even though the light that's born of the Torah study and the friendships and the love and the community that we have is certainly more powerful than any act of darkness. And yet, all right, we live in a world in which people have to sell.
2-year anniversary coming up.
Yeah. I mean, we can tell if you just because now I'm interested myself.
March 16, maybe?
I'm going to look at my playlist. Yeah, it's coming up. I'm going to look at my playlist and find Daily Power Parsha, because that should have, come on. How am I going to find it here? Daily Power Parsha. Let's see how many we have here. These are the ones that are posted. I think we posted most of them. Sometimes the recording doesn't come out or whatever.
You can look for the date, your email that you sent announcing it for the first time.
I'm looking to see how many. As of, looks like we haven't posted in a few weeks over here. As of January 11th, I don't know, we got to get more up to date over here. We had 365 sessions of DPP. Okay. That's a lot. I mean, it should be more if you figure 365 days a year and it's 2 years, but whatever. However the math works out. At least 365. Listen, I'm waiting for the article on CNN, right? Intown Jewish Academy, breaks 400. Okay, it's going to happen one day. It'll happen. That's Mashiach's headlines.
I wanted to add something. As you were talking about, being religious and being nice and all that. I just read an interesting article. It was about the Alara about skiing. And I was really intrigued. They had like 7 points, of some Alara about skiing. And one of the points was that, like, you cannot, give your ski pass to someone else. If you pay for yourself, you have to pay also for each individual and not like pass around the ski pass,
right?
This kind of thing. So that was interesting.
Yeah, interesting. All right, everyone gets a ski pass then. Got to do it. All right, great to see everyone. Maybe we'll do a IJ on the slopes. That would be fun.
You have to send the information to the nightly news Made in America.
Oh, there is a thing? Oh, cool.
Yeah, they do positive things at the end of the news.
Let's do it. Someone take care of that. Let me know what I need to do. All right. We'll see you guys. That's not a bad idea, actually. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Tomorrow, we're going to conclude with the 7th reading and the Haftorah, because I think we set this up nicely that we have enough time to be able to do it tomorrow. And I look forward to it then. We'll see you guys. Have a wonderful day. Take care, everybody.